Hello, Kato.
Hello, Mitch.
Oh my god. We're live. We're
Ooh,
ready to go. Just gonna make
ah,
sure everyone can hear us. I believe they can.
fantastic. And we are
Fantastic.
tragically missing an as
We are
tonight.
unfortunately missing an ads tonight. They are feeling a little bit under the weather, which is
Mm.
life. Unfortunately, everyone is busy and getting sick because it's very wintry in the UK.
Is it where you live? It's been really relatively clement here.
Oh no, it's been like rubbish down here.
Oh, okay. Bad luck.
It was slightly sunny for like half a day on like Thursday.
Mm. You should consider living somewhere that isn't London. So,
Or I could
uh,
continue living in London. I'd love that shit.
fair enough. So, we are live. The
We are live.
beautiful, lovely people can hear us.
They can.
Shall we jump in?
Yes. So who are you?
Oh, I'm Kato, aka Kato.
And I'm Mitch, aka Kung Fu Panzer. You can follow us on all the things, but we are talking about Clear Skies Episode 3, Stowaway.
Ooh.
Ooh! So Eric is back with the ridiculous episode names that I love. We have just been rated, which is delightful.
Delightful. Yeah, it is an A+ episode name, Stowaway. It really has that nice dual meaning that
Oh no!
I love going on.
Our
Oh,
alerts
yeah.
look weird. Give me a second. I'm just gonna fix that.
Okay.
There we go. That should now look fine. Thank you for whoever just hosted us. Q Times. Thank you, Q Times, for hosting us. You absolute legends. And thank you everyone who's just come from Eric's stream.
Yeah.
You've just caught us at the beginning
Welcome.
talking about the Stowaway.
The Stowaway.
So, unfortunately, last week we did discuss that you weren't quite pleased if we had to sit through another space journey to Narendra.
I just remember getting to the Way is Shut Part 4 and being like, oh my goodness, how? How are we still in this corridor trying to get to Narendra Station? It was a slog,
It was
y'all.
a slog last time, but at least this time we don't have to get by any like weird embargo lines.
Yeah, okay, this time we are not at war with the Klingons, and
We're
that does
not at
make
war
it
with
a
the
little bit easier and a little bit less massively stressful as we try and get through this one corridor of space without Klingons turning on us. I guess it's a little bit more relaxed.
Thank you, KC, for hosting us.
Um,
Yeah,
but
so hopefully
we
it's
are
not
get,
too many episodes.
but we are gonna have some episodes before we get to Shackleton.
So
And
hopefully it's just we have this episode and then we get to Starbase 24.
yeah,
Then we have another episode and then we get to Narendra.
so we are 2 weeks into effectively a 6-week, I believe, trip to Starbase 24,
Yes.
and then there is another sort of 4 or 5 weeks to get to Shackleton after that. So if we have an episode every 2 weeks, that'll be like one here, one at Starbase 24, another 2 in the middle. We will get to Shackleton sometime in March.
Sometime in March.
Let's
or
say
July.
before Easter.
We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. We will be at Shackleton by Christmas.
We will get there. Oh man. Hopefully by Christmas we will have gotten to Narendra Station.
There we go. Yeah, Shackleton. The Shackleton Expanse Narendra is on the very closest edge of Shackleton to the Federation, but you have the whole of Federation space, the sort of standard Federation space. On the edge of that, there's Starbase 24, and then you have beyond that Klingon space, and then beyond that Shackleton. So Starbase 24 is like a halfway point from Earth to Shackleton, and Narendra being the start of Shackleton. But that's the close side of Shackleton, the far side of Shackleton. You can think of Starbase 24 as like, if you start in New York and you're trying to get to LA, Starbase 24 is some part of the middle of America. I don't know. Let's
Somewhere.
say Houston. I really I started
American
that and I
geography
was
is
like,
not for us.
oh wait, I don't know how geography works in America.
It is a place somewhere in the States.
Yeah, if the Shackleton Expanse is the Pacific Ocean and Starbase 24 is LA, then they started at Earth, which is New York, and they are trying to get across all of America to then get to the very start of the whole of the Shackleton Expanse, which in this analogy is the whole of the Pacific Ocean.
Which is huge.
Which
But
is
yes,
huge.
Hopefully, doesn't take us forever. Hopefully. Though, Kato, does a 5-year mission start from when you get to where you're meant to be exploring? Or from when you
Ooh.
leave?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know how Starfleet would really consider it. I
What if
imagine,
it takes you like 4 years to get to the place?
yeah, and then you do like 2 weeks, and you're like, we got to turn around and
You
go
have to
home.
turn around and go home.
Yeah.
We
It
definitely
took,
were there at least a day.
it's a 5-year mission. It took us 2 years, 5 months, and 29 days to get there. We have like a day trip there, and then we go back. Basically, that's fine. That's 5
Easy.
years.
That's 5.
Uh, yeah, I mean, hopefully not. And it does give everyone an opportunity to have a little bit of an extra shakedown cruise. So a shakedown cruise, for people who aren't familiar, when you're first launching a new boat, a new vessel, a new ship, you send it on a little cruise in sort of safe, familiar waters, because everything breaks. Just
Everything
straight
does break.
away. I have been in dry dock on ships before. I have had proper like hull repair ships going on to my ships. And then I have left and then spent 2 weeks sailing that ship around. And at the end of, I don't know, 3 weeks even, at the end of the 3rd week, we were like, I think maybe we've fixed all of the things that broke after we came out of dry dock. It's a massive annoying irony, in fact, because basically you go into dry dock or something to fix your ship,
Yeah.
and then you come out and a whole bunch of extra stuff breaks. And you're like, I just spent like 2 months doing nothing but fixing the ship. And now the ship's breaking again.
I mean, that's exactly what's already happening
Yeah,
on the Ross.
exactly. But that's why it's nice that we're going through some nice sort of safe space, like between Sector 1 and Starbase 24, between Earth and Starbase 24. Basically, there shouldn't be much dangerous because they'll be in Starfleet space. Like, it'll be nice and peaceful, hopefully. There won't be, like, random attacks from enemies or anything. So, like, it should be a really great place to have random malfunctions in the warp core and stuff.
Yeah, that definitely wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And then it's nice not only for the engineers and everyone who's trying to fix stuff, but we also are getting kind of little hints of everyone getting to know each other, settling into their new roles. So it turns out Exio is actually doing some counseling.
Which is great. It's her job.
Yeah, I mean, it's her specialty. I don't know if it's her job as the first officer, as the second in command. I don't know if that's necessarily part of the job.
I think
If
it would
she's doing
definitely be a
counseling,
secondary role.
yeah, because if she's doing counseling more in the like Starfleet medical sense of sort of psychoanalysis, psychotherapy kind of stuff, I can see that being quite an interesting dichotomy because already Starfleet Medical has such a complicated relationship with ethics because there's this dual sort of purpose of normally doctors and medical practitioners are totally obligated to the patient and a tiny bit obligated to the public good, which is like very specific circumstances where if you get massively infected with something that will hurt other people, they do report it. Or if you're going to hurt anyone else because of your illness, they will report it because they have an obligation to the public. But normally, they don't disclose anything because their first duty is to you, the patient. With Starfleet Medical, they have the secondary duty, which is to the captain and to the ship's safety. And so they end up pushing a slightly different line because they have a slightly different set of priorities. And I'd be really interested in seeing kind of what ethical issues Exio is having, because Exio is not just a random ship's counselor within Starfleet Medical hierarchy. She's also in command, essentially, of the entirety of the ship staff.
Yeah.
So if you had basically any condition that you wanted to see counseling for, if you had depression, anxiety, a specific phobia, sort of more intense mental illnesses like bipolar disorder or like personality disorders and those kinds of things, and you wanted to talk to someone, I wouldn't necessarily talk to your boss's boss's boss.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird conflict.
It will definitely create a really interesting sort of question, you know, is she taking on patients herself? Is she actively talking to people? And how does she manage the fact that as the first officer, as the commander, she gets to decide where people are put and what jobs they're given and who isn't up for promotion? And as a counselor, her first duty is to sort of the best of the patient, and how she like melds those two goals will be really fascinating going forward. However,
absolutely.
We didn't actually see any of it today, so I may be jumping a little bit ahead.
It was a bit of a tell-don't show, but that was good. It was good because it was more about establishing what's happening, where we're at. Vren is settling in to his nice little pilot's chair.
Yeah, I wrote this in my notes as, unfortunately, Vren turns out to be good at his job.
Yeah,
because
being capable, it's a thing.
Yeah.
But I think kind of we didn't talk about it last week, but the ship, the Ross, has so much going on. And so much new cool things. I mean, yes, it was only Warp 7 because that's the only limit you're allowed to go.
It's a very sensible and safe limit because of all of this weird stuff about how warp fields might mess with stars and do bad things.
Do very bad things.
Star Trek has occasionally been quite weird about, oh no, warp fields are bad for the environment, and then be like, oh, well, you can't warp inside a solar system, which the science of it doesn't work. If you don't warp inside a solar system, it takes you days to get to Jupiter, let alone out of your basic Earth solar system. It's not a workable solution.
It is not, but that's okay. But what we have with the cool things, which is a hollow emitter suite throughout the entire ship.
Yeah, I really like this. I like they basically went, well, it wouldn't really make sense for XEO not to be able to go into any part of the ship. So now all the Jeffries tubes, all of the dead spaces, they all also have hollow emitters.
But it also it enables this really interesting thing of XEO can just teleport anywhere on the ship.
Yeah, it's
like
a really beautiful dynamic. It's great. I also like the sort of upgrades to stellar cartography, making it more 3D and more exciting. I think it might have been Rave that was like Treasure Planet, which
it's a great aesthetic.
Treasure Planet, an amazing film.
It's tops.
One of a formative film in the life of the young Kato. But we also had like this massive computer core and the sort of notion of hover chairs, which they sound wildly unsafe and terrifying in lots of ways.
And I really hope excellent.
Yeah, I really hope that they don't ever malfunction, because can you imagine?
Those malfunctioning would be a bad time.
Yeah, for the same reason I find the concept of flying cars just absolutely terrifying, because what if you stole your flying car? Hover chairs.
Oh no.
Reasonable fears.
And so, like, we've got this really interesting, like, very modern take on Jeffries tubes and the ability to move around the ship. And it's not only, like, effective, but fun.
Yeah.
Like, the way that Azri and Exio going around in the tubes is just like, this is the best.
It sounds not at all open to exploitation for races and or other shenanigans.
Who knows, Kato? What sort of shenanigans?
I mean, but like the temptation to go and be like, all right, every week we're gonna have an event, or like once a month we're gonna have an event in Ship RP, and we're gonna declare like, the Whimsy Discord, we're gonna have an RP event, and I'm just gonna make like racing in the Jeffries tubes at a thing. It's like a scene. I want everyone to do it at some point. I'm so tempted because I love it so much, and I want so many shenanigans.
Kato, it's part of it's part of the Ensign Fantasy League. It's how quick you are on the tube.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And I love other bits of things like that, like the fact that there's a competition between the engineers that are assigned to the main warp core and the engineers that are assigned to the secondary warp core. Like, of course there is. That is absolutely how that would work. I have been on so many, like when I worked on ships, we had starboard and port watches, and we had forward and aft watches. And so you had forward port, forward starboard, aft port, and aft starboard. And there was like, I mean, they had slightly different like lines they had to work. They had different things they had to do, and the competition between like the port watches and the starboard watches hated each other. The forward watches and the aft watches hated each other, and so you didn't get on with anyone on the ship. It was really hilarious.
So Jaffet has just said something that is tops, which is robot wars between the two engineering crews.
Oh my gosh, I really hope that we can go into like. I mean, I don't want to dictate to RP, but I really want to know every engineer that is in the RP server. I want to know whether you are main warp core or secondary warp core.
Alpha or beta?
Well, no, because it's not even alpha and beta. Alpha, beta, and gamma is different. There will be alpha, beta, and gamma for primary, and alpha, beta, and gamma for secondary warp core. So there is so much potential for so many. Like, I just want all of the good prank wars.
And all of the rivalries.
Yeah, I once filled my boss's on the ship. I once filled my boss's cabin with glitter. But when I say like filled with glitter, we rigged it so that when the door went off, several glitter cannons exploded in his face. We filled both of his pillows with glitter. We put glitter in all of his drawers. We put glitter behind his like porthole cover, so when he opened the window to look out, glitter.
That's like tops.
Everything. And then the crew change happened, and he was replaced by his alternate officer. And then his alternate officer came to us like a week later and was like, "Why? Why is there glitter in my sink? What have you done?" And we were like, "That was, yeah, cool. Anyway, boss, we're gonna be over here."
So I had God, my boss went on leave for like 2 months. He had a massive like family trip planned. He was taking his daughters away,
Mhm.
and what we did was gift wrap everything.
Oh,
We
nice.
we took the keys out of the keyboard and gift wrapped them all individually.
Nice.
So he didn't know which key was what, and then
Until
we
you unwrapped them?
until he unwrapped them, and we'd
Ah,
also
nice.
rearranged all of the keys into different places. It
I mean, that
was
wouldn't. If he was a proper person, that wouldn't have mattered because you could just touch type.
oh no, he could touch type, but it annoyed him.
Okay. That's very reasonable.
Ah,
I did
it
I
was
did
tops.
I did have that as well. We gift wrapped somebody's cabin. And we'd taken everything out, so we moved their entire cabin somewhere else, and it wasn't a cabin, it was like a hole in the wall bunk.
Yeah.
But we moved it out, and then we like papered over their cabin, so they had to like break into it because it didn't have a door normally. Anyway, so yeah, guys, those are just some suggestions for LP. Yeah, good ideas from us. You're totally sensible and professional mods.
Exactly. We're definitely normal people.
I'm Q, I think, on the RP server, so like I'm perfectly free to suggest all of the nonsense.
Exactly. I think
what else have we got?
A really cool thing is the floor for the marine species.
Yeah, cetacean ops, so deck 13, which is probably not inauspicious in cetacean cultures. Big old water tank for all of your ocean-faring species to hang out and be involved.
Which is awesome. Because we aren't aware of any major NPCs that are ocean-based.
Not yet.
At this point in time, but it's nice to know that we have that capability.
Yeah, it's about sort of accommodations for different needs, which the ship is obviously all about in lots of different ways. I like cetacean ops. It's a very like, it's one of those things that was kind of a little Easter egg in the Galaxy class blueprints, sort of based on the sort of history of Trek and Star Trek: The Voyage Home, which like very explicitly has them rescuing whales for specific reasons. So it's never really been fleshed out what it does, and I hope that the fact that it's included means that Eric has plans.
I hope so.
I agree.
And I think
you're correct. Not Struthians. Totally not Struthians.
Unfortunately not Struthians. And we also had a 10 forward.
Yeah.
With our delightful, very strange Betazoid raised Vulcan.
An incredibly unusual Vulcan. I like Solon. I like having explicitly a gender fluid NPC who is gonna sort of like have that fluidity and it's very specific. Like, no, I'm having more of a masculine day. I'm having more of a feminine day. But having that kind of generalness of like they them is always appropriate. I like that.
Well, I think that's kind of interesting coming from a Betazoid background, from a species that could just kind of innately know.
Yeah, the Betazoid versus Vulcan thing is really interesting because you can have that sort of, Vulcans are all about repressing and not expressing their emotions outwardly, and having a bunch of Betazoids who are like, yeah, but I can read you, so why bother?
I can literally read your mind. Like, chill the fuck out, bro.
Yeah. I don't know why chill the fuck out, bro makes me think that, they're a very like New Zealand surfer dude. Like,
oh, bro, it's all it's all good, bro. Just chill out, bro.
Chill out, bro. Do you want a drink?
Oh no, we cannot continue this, Kato. Not again.
No, I know it's dangerous, and we would go on all stream. So yeah, lots of really nice details and lots of things that are probably going to come up or could come up at various points, like a huge shuttle bay with lots of different shuttles, including the Argo, the recon type transport, which means that they can go off and have little sort of small shuttle class adventures doing some espionage and some spying.
For sure.
Not that they would ever do anything at all under the table or underhand or be involved in any espionage or anything bad, basically ever.
Okay, yeah. Who would ever allow any kind of espionage on this ship of all ships? Not
this captain. Certainly not.
Certainly not this captain. Certainly not anyone.
I have seen the Solon art. It is very sexy. Solon is very much my pick for new Zazaret.
I don't know. Vren is standing right there.
I don't think Vren, I don't think Vren's core, if you were gonna break him down to his fundamentals, I don't think Vren is sexy on that fundamental I agree he's stupid and annoying. But not overwhelmingly sexy.
Not overwhelming.
Maybe to Prol.
Maybe to Prol. He's unbelievably overwhelming and sexy to Prol.
To Prol, yeah. But also Solon being an NPC that was made by chat and sort of shared with Eric. It's another nice way Eric has of bringing the fans and everything into the game in a lot of ways. So I hope
Yeah,
you
it was
feel
really fun.
I hope you feel loved and appreciated because we do love and appreciate you.
Obviously, I think kind of let's get into what actually happened in the episode and stop talking crap the whole time.
That was all stuff that was mentioned, at least a bit in the episode, referenced, kind of.
So let's talk about the definitely not espionage that's totally happening right now.
So our definitely not Romulan wakes up.
Definitely not dead Romulan.
Yeah, well, no, our definitely dead, not Romulan.
Sorry, definitely dead, not dead Romulan, not Romulan.
No. They're definitely dead, and then definitely not a Romulan. It's truth. Objective truth.
Objective truth.
Yeah, and we already talked about, like, McCrell kind of has a quick chat with the Romulan, and then immediately is like, well, I need the captain in here right now.
Yeah, right the fuck now. And then we had the fun Zoom.
Yeah, we had Sul and Exio kind of making their way down. And this sort of gathering of the relevant people, so Olin as kind of the person that the Romulan has most wanted to talk to and most been open with, and then Exio and Azuri as the sort of command team, and then McCrell as the doctor, kind of all going in to take this like 4-person approach to dealing with this one incredibly dangerous Romulan.
Absolutely. And I think it was really interesting how the Romulans spoke to everyone. Because like we had moments of actual like where choice of words and language became an important thing. And it was such a fascinating back and forth because it's really interesting, especially in these kind of situations. Azuri is quite passive when it comes to a lot of negotiations, diplomatic side of things. Obviously, letting Olin and McCrell kind of manage that whole discussion. But there is this constant, like, and again, kind of that, we're going back to Prowl, this constantly watching element. Where you can very clearly see Azuri is taking note of everything that's said, understanding everything, interjecting when necessary, and just allowing the conversation to flow.
Yeah, I really like the way Azuri kind of runs their bridge and runs the senior staff and lets everyone try things and possibly make mistakes and sort of says, let's have these people try this approach and see what happens. Because I think it's very much a command thing. It's like the thing it reminds me most of is like when you're at arrest calls in sort of like big hospitals, the person who is in charge physically takes a step back. And as long as you've got enough physical people there dealing with the fact that like a person is dying in front of you, they should never touch the person. All they do is stand and they watch and they make sure everything is done correctly and they take a note of everything and everyone communicates through them or like at least feeds back to them. But they are very much not actively doing because leadership is so much about watching and synergizing and having that holistic picture that requires you not to be actively invested in what's going on. So it's a really sort of smart management strategy and I can see it really working for them. We do discover a couple of like interesting things that we sort of get out of this conversation. So it's quite open seeming. The Romulan's quite approachable, quite like sort of easy to talk to. Sucks up a little bit to the concept of Starfleet and like the badge.
Well, it's kind of trying to massage the egos to get something out of it.
But superficially, it's a very nice chat, and I found kind of after this we had a sort of senior staff meeting, and we got a sense of what every character in the room's read had been, and I went, oh my gosh, yeah, everyone is so much more suspicious than I am, which is very reasonable because this Romulan is definitely not telling the whole story. It's definitely not above board, and stuff like, he originally wanted to go back to his family to try and protect them because he was worried that he might be seen as a traitor, but now that he's officially dead, he doesn't need to go back to his family, so you can just drop him off somewhere, like, right, that's fine.
Not even sure he has a family at this point.
Yeah. He tries a lot on, and he definitely comes off as someone who maybe has a bit of an agenda, even if he doesn't quite know what that is. But it's definitely a conversation where it's like, I'm glad I am not the person that is required to make decisions about this, because I was like, oh, this guy's on the level, he's totally fine.
He's totally legit. But I really appreciate this kind of like kindness first approach. And it's generally coming from Azuri and then being backed up by McCrell in this way of actually being open, being a part of things. And I think that it stems a little, they know they're going into a situation where there is a massive diplomatic debate happening between the three major powers of the region. And the Romulans want in. So actually having someone with Romulan intelligence is gonna be really useful.
Yeah. He's definitely an asset, and like they're very much correct that they shouldn't just drop him off randomly wherever.
No.
Not least because he is technically a Federation prisoner, but also because he has the potential to be really useful.
Mm.
But I agree, like they are taking a very non-hostile approach, and it's very sensible from Azari not to bring someone like Prahl, who has that much more, you know, kind of kill or be killed, aggressive, must protect sort of attitude, which is appropriate for Prahl's role
Yeah,
and for
he's
Prahl's sort of responsibility. Like his role as security officer is to offer that. What if we just put him in the brig and then we didn't have to worry about the security threat?
and
Like,
then
that
we
is
never touched him again. And
that is
it was really interesting to see Theq back Prahl up on it.
mm,
Someone who's been to everyone else kind of universally kind, nice, and approachable in that way Bolians are.
yeah. I like this choice for a couple of reasons from Xander. I think this episode in general is a really good highlight spotlight episode for Theq. I think this is me kind of really getting a sense of like what Theq is about. I think it's important that the senior staff do not all agree. It's important that someone expresses that more kind of safety conscientious kind of, well, why don't we just give the Romulan a hard time? Why don't we just lock him up? Do we have to let him out? Do we have to play this like complicated espionage game where we pretend to be taken in by his like goody routine? I like that. I like that from Theq as well. I like the idea that like not everyone necessarily has that grounding in espionage that obviously Azari has. And I think, I think like Kurt is quite likely to be pro-espionage. I don't know why. That's probably being somewhat...
That's a bit racist.
Yeah. But is it wrong given what we've seen of her? Is it wrong? I mean,
maybe.
And then I think Olin being more diplomatic kind of has that understanding of like the game. Diplomacy and espionage are not the same thing, but you kind of have to have an understanding of how the other one works. But I like that Theq, particularly someone who is like so approachable and friendly to most people most of the time and makes such an effort, has this sort of hard line of like, well, no, you were bad, and therefore I'm not going to bother trying to be nice. And he's very obviously not going to bother. Like, you have this discussion where Prahl eventually concedes that, like, yeah, it will be better if we can, like, pretend that we're into him, try and use him for something, and, like, let him wander around the ship freely and see if he does anything bad before expecting a trap, like, trigger it. And then Theq is like, cool, let's make him scrub cetacean ops. Like, that is such a difference from the Theq who last episode was deliberately being aggressive and hostile to a Tellarite because he knows that's what makes a Tellarite feel most comfortable. This is someone who is going out of his way to be unfriendly to this guy. And I like that pettiness for Theq. I like that element of kind of resentment and not being on board with the espionage, because I think it makes for a much more interesting show if not everyone is not immediately like, yeah, let's pretend to like this guy. We're all 100% on board with the espionage. It helps to have that conflict within the crew.
It's balanced. And I think Prahl and Theq both come from the same place of trying to protect the crew and the ship, but with very different approaches.
Yeah. Well, they have similar approaches in that they're just like, lock him up. Don't let him do anything.
But then we have the complete opposite in Mackrell, who is very much a patient-first process, worrying about the chip in his head and worrying about kind of... And then, interestingly, which is what I found really great, was worrying about rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And with the whole idea of plastic surgery coming in to hide him and actually give him a level of comfort that he otherwise would not have, was a really great choice from Bonnie.
Yeah, I really like where Mackrell is coming from, and I like the contrast between Mackrell, who is obviously worried about sort of degenerative changes and damage to his brain from the medical point of view of like, this is bad, we should stop it, we should delay it, we should try and keep this person as alive and as comfortable as we can for as long as possible, versus Azari, who's going, yes, but if you have an officer, particularly an intelligence operative, whose brain is degenerating, they might get disinhibited and they might be more likely to spill secrets.
Yeah.
And so you have that kind of the interesting contrast between the medical kind of pro-patient response and this more tactical, yeah, but wouldn't it be great if we could keep him alive as long as possible, because the longer we keep him alive, the more chance we find out stuff from him. And it's interesting.
But then the other side of that is that you can't really trust anything he says once the degeneration starts getting to that point. Because like it depends on what level the degeneration is, like whether any of this is true, whether he's just lying.
Oh yeah, I mean he's
whether
lying.
he knows whether this is true or not.
Yeah, the correct sort of intelligence response is he's lying at all times until you can prove that he's telling the truth. Like none of his information comes with any kind of none of his information comes as verified. It's not trustworthy. I would get other sources to back it up. I wouldn't act on it very much. Like that's the correct intelligence point of view. I don't think that changes once his brain starts degenerating. I think depending on the path the degeneration takes through his brain, like frontal lobes are like a really common place where if you lose your frontal lobes, you get very disinhibited in lots of different ways. And there's a couple of other ways that you can sort of create that, make it happen.
So are you saying we might get a horny on main Romulan?
Yeah,
I mean, brain degeneration.
There's lots of there are actual diseases that we treat where we specifically say, so like Parkinson's disease, and the dopamine that we give to Parkinson's, like to treat Parkinson's disease because it's a disease where there's not enough dopamine in the body, that instantly the contrast to that is being over dopaminized, where you can have almost psychosis like symptoms, but you also can get incredibly disinhibited and suddenly like gamble all your money away, or like you can have it often with people becoming really, really quite inappropriate in lots of ways and in lots of contexts because the medication they're on is treating the problem that they have, but is also massively disinhibiting them.
Yeah.
And like it's a thing we say to watch for when we're reviewing people on these medications because we want to check that they're not doing anything like that. So yeah, there's lots of
fun things.
Yeah, lots of fun, happy medication side effects that could be mirrored in this person whose brain is degenerating as we speak and has a limited number of days to live. Yeah.
I think so. There was a point that we raised already last week in that there's the potential of this all being a ruse. All being a lie, but then there's also the potential that was raised this episode of that they are a sleeper agent and are yet to be activated.
Yeah, so there's in the episode there was the story mentioned of sort of Admiral Jarrock who was planted as a defector to lure the Enterprise into the Romulan neutral zone, and then even he wasn't aware that he was a defector, and sort of even he didn't have that sort of awareness because the Romulans are so good at the mind games.
The programming and deprogramming, it's kind of wild.
Yeah. I feel really bad because I was like, and I should look up that guy and like what episode it's from. It's from, amazingly, an episode called The Defector of
Very
TNG.
helpful.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so TNG episode The Defector.
Which season was that?
Now, do you think that the information I looked up contains that? It was episode 10 of season 3 of Star Trek TNG. Yeah, see, this is me slacking a little bit on my pre-work. But yeah, Eric mentioned that, and that's probably a good episode to go back and rewatch to get a sense of just how conniving Romulans are when they sort of can go to the extent of planting agents who aren't even aware what their goals are and aren't aware ultimately what they're planning.
It's almost comically evil at that point.
They're so good, and I struggle with, I think, with spy plots and plots where there's sort of lies on lies on lies on lies, it's always important to make sure the players have that balance of going, well, if we just decide everything's a lie, we will stay here, mired in our own paranoia, making no choices and moving on, not at all. And so I like that Azuri, like very particularly, is very good at shutting that down and going, yeah, and that is a possibility we should consider, but we shouldn't let that possibility prevent us from doing things about the Romulan and taking steps and sort of moving forward. But I also think it's important when you're trying to tell a story that's all about lies and spying and espionage is to make sure that you don't overwhelm your audience with doubt and uncertainty.
If nothing is real, then what the fuck is the point?
Yeah, and you have to sort of find that important balance where people still feel invested, twists and reveals and things still feel like they have consequence because they still feel like they have any sort of meaning, and you're not just like, I don't understand this, I'm never going to understand this, I don't care, I'm going to skip to the end and find out what happens. You want to sort of have that balance, and I think they're doing a good job so far. I'm really intrigued to see sort of how it works going forward, because I I'm never quite sure if I like a spy episode or a sort of espionage thing until it's finished and I can go, right, did that make sense?
And then you have to watch it again from the start and be like, did all
Yeah.
of the threads that you left make good sense?
Yeah,
So
because
I
there's
think
always.
circling back on paranoia before we continue, we
Mhm.
have our boy Prowl and a joke where Vren says, "Is Lakat a changeling?" because she agreed with him, and
And then
Prowl's just like,
shuts that down.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You say that again, I knock you down and out.
Yeah, I think, like, very obviously, Prowl and Vren have both been through probably the Dominion War and have both very seriously suffered a lot of consequences. Vren is fronting a little bit better than Prowl, but there's still some fronting going on.
Yeah.
And I like that they have obviously two very different reactions. Like, there's the black humor, sort of jokey nature of Vren versus the absolute serious, we don't joke about that stuff of Prowl. And they're opposites, and they should be in love.
Maybe they already are.
Maybe they already are.
And it was also, circling back to what we discussed last week and a couple times, is that the way that Azri commands is always getting everyone's input.
Mm-hmm.
And very clearly, Vren is just like quietly like, oh, I'm no good at this kind of garbage. But still openly asks, and he then puts it in his own context of flying and all of that, which was really fun just to like see how this himbro works.
It's also a really good, like, I love that analogy. I love that, like, you don't pull up at the first sign of danger, it is bad. That is actually a very specific aviation problem, which is that planes have crashed because you can have a very specific system warning that tells you that, like, there's too, like, that you're heading too close to the ground. So pilots pull up, and then it keeps happening, and so they pull up and pull up and pull up, pull up, and then they pull up enough that they stall, and then the plane crashes. Because they're responding to one piece of bad information getting sort of repeated to them over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, that is an actual known aviation safety risk that exists. And it's a very specific thing that's talked about where there's the separation between digital systems creating warnings and the need for pragmatic piloting and someone who is aware and at the helm. Because even in your, like, super amazing fighter jet that's absolutely automated, at some point, some decisions need to be taken by a human based on conditions and gut instinct. Still.
They get to a certain point where artificial intelligence cannot comprehend because it's not been thought of previously within the parameters of their programming.
Yeah. And it's also like the human brain is significantly more complicated than any machine we've ever made.
Yeah.
And cannot hold as much data in its head as the most complicated machines we've ever made. But the problem with algorithms and protocols, and like in the health services, one of the things we're encountering is that there are lots and lots of algorithms, there are lots of protocols. It's very easy to sort of follow them by rote. And 99% of the time, that will be the correct thing to do. Part of what the point of having a human is there is that the human's brain is learning 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 different signs of changes in weather and like very slight, very subtle changes to train the subconscious part of the human brain to go, this doesn't feel right. And then that 1% of the time, the human brain should be able to go, this doesn't feel right because of all of this data that we're not consciously aware we're collecting. And so therefore we can't program into a machine because all of the conscious data we can sort of program into a machine. And then you can go, yeah, there's something, and therefore I'm gonna, and then you get the shift.
That's actually really interesting because we have Exio.
Yeah.
To what level does Exio have intuition? Like, obviously, they're very good at reading body language and actually being able to observe and understand because that's their role as counselor and commander. But to what extent will things like smell, sight, sounds, and touch affect Exio's ability to intuit from dangers that they aren't aware of?
I think it is going to be a process of her learning those skills. Because I think the key thing that she commented on when she sort of first appeared was how much more random everything was on a sort of fundamental level than it had been in all of the holo programs she'd had, even though she'd had holo programs that were to the nth degree. And, Starfleet holo programs are really good at simulating like why a warp core has exploded. They're really good for that kind of level of debugging. But still not as random as the universe. Still, the simulation's not as perfect at sort of replicating that infinite randomness of the universe in real life, which is absolutely fascinating and certainly something that I want to see. Before we move on to Stowaway Part 2, the other Stowaway.
The other Stowaway.
I do just want to shout out, Aki had the best line of the show.
So far, yes.
It's going up on my quotes wall of like really amazing quotes. Olin, just as they were leaving, the Romulan said, "Don't sneak up on me or my dog again. Don't test my patience." And I was like, yes. Aki, I don't know if that's why you named your dog Patience. That is the best.
I'm going to say
A+.
Probably.
Yeah, but still, I was like, mwah, beautiful, amazing.
Oh, yeah. I'm so like, and this is just kind of being honest. Like from episode 1, I didn't really connect with Olin. And this is not of no fault of the character, nothing. But I think as Olin slowly kind of becomes more part of the crew and settling into their position, I'm kind of getting more of a vibe, and I'm really kind of feeling it more.
Yeah, there's definitely a slight fish out of the water vibe to Olin in that first year, and they're gonna have that with the sort of being diplomatic and being on Starfleet, and having like slightly different roles and stuff. And I do, there are 6 players on this show plus a whole bunch of Eric's NPCs.
Yeah.
You can't love everyone equally. I just want to make sure points go up on the board for Aki. They are bringing it with the lines, and they are actually really bringing it with Olin. In this like first Romulan plot, Olin is providing a lot of really good stuff to our like little command level presence heavy team over there.
And also like these mentions of previously working with Romulans and where we're like, what's going on here? We're like, let's tease some of this out. And I think it's going to be potentially like even selected specifically for this mission because of the history with Romulans.
Yeah, I love a bit of backstory tease. However,
that's great.
The meeting is interrupted. Red alert! Oh my gosh, the warp core, something's going on. We have a full stop, lurching straight out of warp 7 to 0. Oh dear.
We have the beginning of Theq Leonardis's very bad, no good day.
Yeah. And we meet a couple of new characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so Olin Dari and Andorian, the right-hand person for Theq, still very much on team.
Did we not meet them last episode?
I don't know.
I thought we met them at the end.
We get reintroduced to, and we get more of a sense of them in this episode. So I think it's definitely worth calling her out as like an amazing character.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Yeah, like very much the new Jiv in that like this is the go-to engineering technobabble person for the engineer to talk to. So this is like Olin is very much the person who's going to come up to me and be like, "Chief, I'm really sorry, but the inertial dampeners have gone offline and the ejection couplings are like overcrossed with the replicators, and it's all gone to pot." And you're like, "Yeah, that's your job is just to spew holobabble, spew technobabble for the Chief to solve." They're very much the Chief. This is what the problem is, character. Which
is always a fun character. I like that they've got a bit of an attitude to them.
Yeah, they're a great contrast to Theq. Like I like the sort of the trend of having a really nice sort of like gentle kind of softer management style like player character engineer, and then Eric can just have a series of like varyingly grumpy and angry and like chip on their shoulder engineers on the NPC side. Slightly more fighty than Jiv was. Jiv was just grumpy.
Yeah, this one's like, a little bit rough and tumble.
Olin is a bit more primary warp core team is way better than secondary warp core team.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it was really interesting when Theq is like, no, none of this competition. Make it work.
Yeah.
Directly to Olin.
That is the way the boss should behave.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not going to work.
I like that her response is, okay, fighting tournament?
Yeah.
Latushan? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a good idea. That is definitely a good idea.
We have already talked about the way Exio is like, oh no, an emergency. Let me immediately. Yeah, I love that. I love that whole thing. And we discover that the reason we have gone to full stop from Warp 7, a dangerous thing, is that something is inside the warp core.
Something is absolutely inside the warp core where nothing can be.
Yeah. So what do they try and do about it, Mitch? Because in my opinion, what they try and do is they go, oh dear, something is inside the warp core, a place where things can't be. Let's try and put a second thing inside the warp core.
Okay,
Maybe
to be
that'll
fair,
help.
first, they scan.
All right, yeah, okay.
And they're like, okay, let's figure out what the heck is in the warp core. Because it should be, this is a place where matter both exists and doesn't exist at the same time.
And again, we have that beautiful, like, sort of blip of, Exio, can we get you down? And, like, she's already right in front of you, because she doesn't take any time to move from the bridge to engineering.
Which is just tops. And it makes me think of, like, we're hopefully going to get a really fun fight where Exio's, like, teleporting mid-fight to punch someone on the other side of the room.
Oh, yeah.
Because she can do that.
Yeah, she's the Anton of this show.
Exactly. Punch someone from across the room. Except
with much more reach than Anton.
Literally, end-to-end ship reach.
Yeah. I also really like the exchange. Like, Lacarte is sort of like the scientist they bring on board because they're like, what's going on? It's a life form. Engineering doesn't do life forms. Science does life forms. And I like this, like, you can't get hurt emotionally or physically. I love that exchange and the sort of the depths it speaks to it. This idea that, like, no, Exio can get emotionally damaged.
Yeah, she has feelings, which is important.
I mean, in some ways, that's worrying because if you can't get hurt physically, you just have to get twice as hurt emotionally. That's right. That's how that works, right?
Yeah, obviously.
I also really like the sort of the dichotomy of, like, Theq being like, get this out of my warp core. I don't want it in there. With Exio's, like, kind of Janeway-like level of excitement of, this is a new thing. I like new things.
And also Lacate's viewpoint on, like, new thing, first contact, let's go buck wild.
Yeah. I do love that. Like, the kind of the defining difference between science and engineering has always been science is like a discovery, and engineering has been like, is the discovery going to hurt my warp core? If yes, no.
Stop it.
That's bad. Yeah.
Stop doing the discovery. It's bad.
I really like, again, I talked about how this episode is so much an episode for Theq for me. And that, like, Theq kind of, like, has this sort of flustered command thing that he goes on. He's very authoritative. And he's like, oh, the command is here. Maybe I should let Exio take command. Yeah. And Exio is immediately, like, again, kind of mimicking that sort of Azuri style leadership, is like, I defer to your judgment.
So it was so fascinating with Theq having this really weird utilitarian view. For Theq, who is normally, like, all about, like, kindness and personal happiness, being like, just taking that step back and being like, I don't care about this creature. It's endangering everyone. Yeah.
I think, again, like, Theq is taking a couple of hard positions away from the rest of the crew and, like, your idealistic Starfleet, nice and happy, let's make friends with everything we meet kind of ideas. But I really like it. I think they're good choices. And I think Theq is right to, like, it's Theq's job to prioritize the engine. It's Theq's job to care about the ship exploding. Theq has very reasonable concerns, which are that if we don't control this, what this creature is producing, it could blow up and destroy us all, and that would be bad. Like, he does not come across in a particularly likable way necessarily, but he is sensible. He is making good decisions, and it is great that the rest of the crew have the capacity to go, why don't we do this other thing that maybe can save this creature's life? Because this is a totally new to science creature. You need that level head in engineering going, yes, that sounds very exciting. The science would be really cool, but it would destroy the ship, so we're not going to do it, all right? You do need that, like, that more kind of level-headed attitude.
Especially in this ship, which has the double warp core, which is so volatile. So it's really... So
with 2,500 people in it.
Exactly. It's a very important choice to make and a very important decision-making process to get there. So they do make the decision to transport the creature out of the ship out of the warp core. But
into
first,
a containment field.
They want to send Exio in to observe it.
Yeah.
So this calls for a transporter chief.
Yeah. So we meet our transporter chief. Our transporter chief's name is Amandeep Singh.
It is not Noor.
It is not Noor Kashgari. That was the name Eric used in the episode. There was a problem with the large number of NPCs he is no doubt juggling.
Yeah.
Amandeep Singh, our token human.
And a really interesting human.
Yeah.
So, for those who aren't familiar, Amandeep is a Sikh, which is a specific religion that started in India, and has some really interesting tenets and practices, specifically focused around these certain apparel and items that they always carry with them.
Yeah.
So it's 100% of the time they always have it. And so we've already got them listed down. Would you like to do it, or shall I?
Yeah, so I can talk them through. We can alternate, I guess. So, like, hair, I would argue, is, like, a big one. Sort of, like, it's called Cash. So, the language that Sikhism is kind of based on is Punjabi, which is, like, one of the many languages from India and, like, surrounding places. And, like, Sikhs do not cut their hair, which is why you normally see Sikhs wearing turbans and having beards. And this is, like, a very sort of crucial part, like it's one of the fundamental tenets of their identity. And Amandeep Singh is rocking that beautiful yellow matching coordinated turban.
Oh,
looking
Chief Singh is nice.
Yeah, looking officially super hot.
Super hot officially.
Yeah.
So obviously we've got the hair. We've also got this is probably another thing that's a little bit less commonly known is a knife. So this is a practice that all Sikhs will carry a knife. Is traditionally it's called a kirpan.
Yeah, it used to be a sword.
It used to be a sword.
It's now a knife.
Now a knife for more modern and practical situations. And it's such a fascinating thing because it can be a big part of self-expression for Sikhs. The way that they carry the knife, the type of knife they carry, and it's super fascinating.
Yeah. And, like, just to briefly touch on the others, I think those are the two most important.
Those are the most visible ones.
There's also a comb called the kanga. There's a gold bangle called the kara. And there's a particular sort of type of underclothing called kachera. But, like, the knife one is arguably the most problematic because it's an additional, like, technically it's an additional weapon and all of this stuff. Like, Starfleet does not necessarily have dispensations for religious garb. We see that with Bajorans. We see that Bajorans aren't allowed to wear their earrings that are a sign of religion, like, of their sort of religion, without approval from the captain, which is initially not granted by Picard in the sort of very first appearances of Bajorans. And that probably applies to human religions too. I guess there's a chance that because human religions are more familiar to Starfleet, because humans have been in they've been in the Federation since the beginning, there's more likelihood that these dispensations would be granted.
Yeah, exactly.
But even like on Earth right now, that is not necessarily the case.
But I think, and there's a couple of really interesting points raised in chat right now, is that the knife is not always a knife, but sometimes it is a representation, a token of the knife.
Yeah.
Obviously, because in some places you cannot publicly carry swords or knives, which is a thing. But I think from a perspective of someone on the outside looking in, Sikhism is a fascinating religion and a fascinating culture. I recommend people look into it. It has this really interesting base in equality. So that's why all Sikh men have the surname Singh, and all Sikh women have the surname Kaur. They are lion and princess, respectively. And
those are not as cool as each other, just saying.
They are not as cool as each other, but...
Sorry to Sikhism, but lions are pretty awesome.
Lions are pretty fucking dope. But it's all about equality and breaking the Indian caste system back when it was a thing. But quick history lesson, it's tops. Give it a bit of a research. It's a really fascinating movement.
And they're also, like, as a culture, as a sort of people, usually pretty devoted to sort of service and charity.
Yeah,
and sort of giving back to the community. Like, there's a lot of good work that is done by Sikhs, and a lot of, like, outreach and sort of charity work, and, like food banks and, like, soup kitchens and that kind of stuff. And that you often find them in sort of healthcare and very sort of, like, giving professions that are about building up community and being kind and doing good work. Because it is something that the culture values. Sikhs are really cool.
Sikhs are really cool, and it's really great to get some representation of a very underrepresented group.
At the same time, Transporter Chief Singh doesn't contribute meaningfully in any positive way throughout the course of this
Unfortunately,
episode.
no.
I would say this is because Eric called him the wrong name. He was
This
just
may have
being
been.
petty.
You're
You're not
just
going
like,
to
no,
call me.
no, screw you, Eric. You
You're
got me
going to
wrong.
call me the wrong name. I am going to, despite spending a determination, invoking the value the next adventure is found on the transporter pad. This guy has a focus in transporters because he is the transporter chief. You would really hope that he had that.
Yeah.
And yet, he still fails. He beams Exio into the warp core, but in a dangerous and unsafe way that nearly loses her transportable emitter.
But it's okay. She's backed up.
I think he was just acting out, but like he had so many reasons to succeed. And not only that, the same role where he's got a determination with 2 automatic successes. He's rolling with a focus and like a pretty good, I assume, engineering score. Like Chief Theq is helping him, and the ship is helping him, and the ship rolls a complication. Still,
maybe Ross was also offended on behalf of the chief.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, for all that we've talked about, like how cool they are, this guy is probably gonna have to go on the records as like being maybe a little bit of a himbo. Definitely hot. Potentially
definitely hot.
Quite useless.
Potentially dumb, but also super hot.
Yeah, well built, incredibly unlucky.
Yeah. So we obviously have this sea cucumber creature, this kind of warp worm or warp leech.
Yeah, we discover this when Exio beams in, is that she gets a couple of moments to actually see somehow. Though to what extent light would or wouldn't exist in that space, who knows?
Exactly.
But sense what's going on and get a better read and a better scan of this creature that is instantly named Dill by Archie. Archie, this is an episode that highlights Chief Theq. I'm gonna give Archie the prize for like MVP for like one-liners and names.
Oh yeah. The Amy Dallin Award.
Yeah, the Amy Dallin Award for outstanding contributions.
Outstanding achievement in the field of improvisation.
Absolutely.
But yes, Dill Pickle, I love him. He's my favorite character from the Rugrats. The Warp Worm was really interesting, and I like the way that they took this approach of like, we want to keep it safe. This new life form that definitely shouldn't exist. And it was really great collaboration between LeCat and McCrell and Theq all coming together. A little bit to Theq's chagrin. But
it was a really great, like, again, this comes back to like Theq steps up in a big way. He leads this scene. He is making all the decisions. He's making all the choices. When the transporter chief fails at beaming, he's like, no, I'm going to do that. Like, I will take over. I'm not going to let this guy, who's clearly an idiot, try and do that again and fail.
Noted himbo, Chief Singh.
I'm so sorry. You were all set up to succeed, baby, and you just failed. Like, you spent your determination, you had a really good value, and yet somehow we're here. But yeah, he sets up this really nice thing. Like, he and Singh are running the transport. Lakat and Ensign Dari are like trying to make the containment field that can hold this worm, and McCrell and Exio are working on trying to find something to feed it. So like, there's this idea that the worm actually feeds off antimatter, so that they can get antimatter from, say, like one of the shuttles or the secondary warp core, but that's like massive and could like cause other problems.
Exactly.
So the shuttles, and they sort of like, they set up this idea, and in the last kind of like moments of the episode, we get that this plan works, but only for 24 hours, and then they have to find another, hopefully more permanent solution.
Exactly, and that's presumably what the engineers are working on now.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 24 hours. Like, that's quite a bit of time.
For Star Trek engineers, 24 hours is basically a week.
Yeah. And maybe it's one of those engineering estimate 24 hours where they say you've got 24 hours, but actually you've got 48.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to make sure you get it in on time. Yeah, I really like this. Like, it works really well. It's nice. They can try and get the warp core back up and running, which, like, obviously is quite important. And that's kind of like where we start sort of ending with the life form going off to medbay. I just want us to like hop back on that, like, sort of note of like, Chief Theq is obviously running this. There's a moment where Gina says that Exio just makes sure to bring the captain into the leak, which I noted because Sam has been so sat back, so passive that entire time, letting their crew run everything and do everything and not getting involved for no reason. you know, it's that sort of like that captain perspective of like, yeah, it's quite lonely being the captain. You have to like send other people off to do dangerous things, trust them to take care of it and manage it, and like, and then get brought in when you need to. And I like the respect for the command structure that happened where Exia was like, "Are you cool with us doing this, Captain?" And then the respect for the team where Azuri was like, "Yep, go for it. You've made a plan. This. Sounds good. You have my approval."
Absolutely, it's been really great, and I think overall this episode was really fun. I like episodes that highlight characters without it being about them.
Yeah.
So like really it's about what they can do. And like it really brings out personalities. I'm really excited for episodes like this for someone like Lakat or Olin where we start to see them really shine. And I think obviously we've seen these kind of things before previously with things like C6 where we had like very focused episodes. But I think this was much more of a broad like controlled experiment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I will say one of the interesting things I'm finding is that this episode felt like it was nice in that it had the sort of like the A and B plot of like there's also these Romulans like stuff going on in the background.
Yeah.
But there's this as well. I think it felt like it fell into two halves. Like we were having the wrap up of the last 2 episodes. We had 2.5 episodes of Romulan Stowaway plot, and now we've had half an episode of what is hopefully going to be the focus for next week as well. And that, like, I think that's one of those things where they will feel it out in future.
Yeah.
They obviously don't have the ability to, like, go through and edit like Star Trek scripts do. I don't think it's a bad system because it means that we're constantly having that Panzer Campbell cliffhanger. We're constantly having that, what's going to happen next week? Like, come back and find out.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's difficult because there's this splitting of the episode into 2 distinct halves where you have the end of last week and the beginning of next week. And it's going to be interesting to see how that stays up and whether we have sort of more integrated narrative where the 2 discussions take place simultaneously or kind of more ability to switch between scenes with different players so that you have like Olin, Makrell, and Azuri leading one half and then Lakat, Exio, and Theq in the other half and switching back and forth a little bit more, or whether it's going to continue in this kind of like we deal with one half, we deal with the other half. So I'm interested to see like how that all plays out in future. It's not necessarily bad how they're doing it now, but I'm going to like be watching for changing it up a bit, different styles of episodes.
Yeah, and I think different pairings of people working together is the important thing for me.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure it's not just always Lakat and Theq working together.
Oh, no. I completely agree. Like, we are still sort of learning who everyone is, establishing the dynamics of what their interpersonal relationships are. I'm just thinking about, like, how you run a whole episode from start to finish with an A plot and a B plot. It doesn't necessarily matter whose A plot it is this week and whose B plot it is, but it's about sort of making sure there's like maybe a bit more balance through the episode and it's not so like Azuri heavy at the start and Theq heavy at the end. But it will be really interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely. And hopefully they find a good pickle jar.
Well, I think they built one, essentially.
Yeah, but they need a new one.
Yeah. Like a pickle jar that lasts longer than 24 hours.
Yeah, hopefully.
Is that your pitch for the next episode title? The pickle jar?
Absolutely. Eric. It's called the pickle jar. That's what it is. So say I, so shall it be. Kay, did you have anything else to add to this episode?
I do not. I wanted to talk a little bit about mechanics, but you said something about wanting to finish within an hour, so...
I do want to finish within an hour.
All right.
Because
more mechanics chat.
Next time.
In the future, maybe.
And also, we may do another mechanics chat sometime outside of this, and maybe another What the Federation. Sneaky teasers. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up now. We're going to raid Q Times because Long Beach by Night is just starting up. It's their new season. You can go see the lovely Sam going and being a terrible, terrible vampire. Have a lot of fun. But for now, who have you been?
I have been Kato, aka Kato, and that's how I intend to continue.
And I have been Mitch, aka Kung Fu Panzer. I don't know, might change. We'll see.
So, Mitch, what's the forecast for tomorrow?
The forecast for tomorrow is, as always, clear skies. We'll see you guys later.